Testing. I saw your lips move, but I couldn't hear a dang sound. How about now?
Can you hear me now?
I sure can, Mr. Verizon.
All right.
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm well, thank you. How are you? Long time.
Yeah, it's been about a year actually, which is much shorter time horizon than some of the other people I've had on so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm doing
Well, I
good.
mean, last year was very, very brief.
Yes. But there are two instances in a very, very brief
That
conversation.
is true. That
So
is true.
that works out to like one average one.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can.
but yeah, so I like to do a theme song when you're ready to go. Just give me like a thumbs up.
Okay.
Cool. Then
Got
I
it.
then I drop in the theme song,
Okay, good.
and then I say hello and welcome to Hello We Don't Talk Let's Talk, the show where I, Christopher Waller, reconnect with old friends, and today we have the spirited Zuhair alum. Zuhair, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Would you prefer that I refer to you as Dr. Zuhair alum?
No,
Okay,
Zuhair's fine.
you sure? You sure? Okay.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it's so as the preamble stated, it's been about a year since we've seen each other. You've been in Cincinnati for a bit of a longer period than we were last time. So
Mhm.
how are you doing today?
I'm very, very well. Thank you for asking. But yeah, it's been just over a year now. Moved here last June. And now we're in midway through September. So
Yeah, the last time we spoke, you were in town, you were in Toronto, you were celebrating the Raptors win, and now we are
Mhm.
on another year
Oh
and
my
on the
God.
complete
Oh my-
opposite side of
Yeah.
roller coaster of emotions. But
Heartbreak, heartbreak.
it was hard to watch.
It was very
Like,
difficult.
God damn it, dude.
It was a very frustrating experience, I'll tell you that. I had a little um, Game 7 watch party with two other people,
Mhm.
socially distanced and everything.
Very safe, very
A
good.
responsible viewing experience, but
But yeah, just
it was
like do
very
a shot every time the Raptors give a turnover, and you got alcohol poisoning right there.
frustrating. Yeah.
Oh man, heartbreaker. Who's your pick for Eastern Conference and Western Conference representatives at this point?
At this point,
Yeah.
between the Heat and the Celtics, it could go either way.
Mhm.
I want to say Celtics because they knocked us out,
That's fair.
so there's
To,
a little bit more consolation.
to lose to the champions
Yeah.
is an honorable defeat.
Hmm. And then Western Conference, it would be so basically initially I wanted the Clippers and Raps to meet in the
Me
finals,
too.
and
I
I
think that
wanted
was the sentiment for
Kawhi
a
to
lot of
watch the
people.
Raptors go back to back without him,
Yeah,
just for that statement, you know?
just the drama, the tension of it all.
Yeah,
Take it all the way to
but
Game Seven. Just the dream storylines.
hmm
But fortunately not to be. Are you rooting for
unfortunately,
a Kawhi repeat at this point? Maybe some love for Jamal Murray.
yeah. Oh, so I mean, he's been playing very, very strong. So
Oh yeah.
I think he deserves some success. But I mean, yeah, Kawhi did us, a historical season last year, and I think loyalty does carry over.
Mhm,
But at the same time, it would also be a pretty nice storyline for the Lakers to get the chip, with Kobe passing.
mhm.
So
Lot of neat through lines there. All we know is that
yeah,
we just don't care about the Rockets winning the championship.
yeah, through the Rockets, everyone else is good.
uh, so yeah, even in our brief conversations last year, didn't really get into a lot of like the intervening years, where my understanding is you went to Waterloo for a bit, went to all the way back to India to
Hmm.
finish up becoming a doctor for the most part.
Yeah.
The Hyderabad bad boy, if you will. Um,
Yes.
and then you came back, did like a brief stint at like a Toronto hospital, maybe,
Mhm.
and then like got a residency at Cincinnati. So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
That's pretty much it.
cool. Then the
But
show doesn't need to continue. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
well, it was great catching up.
Yeah.
Till next time.
So
But
yeah, just
no,
like
I mean,
tell me about that journey.
yeah. So that was actually a wild experience. Yeah. So I think last time we met was after all of that. So
Mhm.
we were,
You're
meeting pretty regularly up until like 2011,
yeah.
where that's kind of where we just started to divert paths. Did I lose you? No,
No, you're
we're
good.
good. Okay.
There may be a time where I'm just like standing perfectly still, and that is
Okay.
because that is how I behave in social
Having an
situations.
absence seizure.
Yeah.
um, no, so I might pick up on random diagnoses.
No, that's perfectly fine. Listen, that's what your brain is wired to do,
We're just
and as
looking for
long as it,
problems.
yeah, 100%.
No. Um, but yeah, so after high school, I did a year at Waterloo. We were still together then. And then at the end of that first year, that's when I moved to Hyderabad, Hyderabad, boy. Which is where my father is originally from, and my grandmother still lives there, his mom.
Hmm,
And so I went back there and started medical school there. So I started in 2011, and over there in India, they follow the British system of medical education, where it's right out of high school for a 6-year training program.
gotcha. You don't have to get like your undergrad and stuff.
Right.
You
So
just
it's
go
not
right
like an
in.
undergrad and then medical school. It's just an undergraduate med.
Was that the main sort of driving factor in taking that stream versus like the sort of Canadian system?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. So there were probably two different buckets of motivation there, like a more personal
Hmm.
motivation and then professional aspects as well.
Gotcha.
So, professionally speaking, of course, having it be more of a streamlined process where you're just in medical school. It takes a little bit longer, but you grind through it, and at the end, you're a doctor no matter what, unless
Hmm.
you fail out,
Yeah, of
obviously, and
course.
that happens a lot. Um, but
And thank God that it does, because otherwise, just like you just went to a doctor
it's a
school
bit
for
of a
six
safety
years.
net.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just too much of a variable. Being an undergrad for 4 years, grinding it out, and then just having the chance at. And again, a lot can happen in 4 years as well.
Mhm.
So it was more of like, hey, I'm pretty committed to this. This makes sense to me. This is what I want to do, and so that was the more streamlined approach to it. So
Gotcha.
went for it.
Nice.
Having said that, coming out is a little bit more of a gamble. Also, as a foreign medical graduate,
Mhm.
matching into the medical system here is quite challenging, and so so it's kind of just like a delayed um, gamble.
Fair enough.
But at the end of the day, you're still a doctor, so you can. If it doesn't work out here, my thought was I could go practice anywhere else in the world. At least
Mhm.
I'd still be practicing medicine.
And even then, you just like yeah, it's just a matter of like continuing to try, if not here, then elsewhere.
Right,
Because
exactly.
doctors are pretty needed.
Yeah.
Uh, and
People
then
get sick all over the world, apparently.
wow, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Especially
Even
this
fun,
year. Especially this year, people get sick
especially this year.
everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um, and then there's the more personal factors as well.
mhm.
So, you're very intimately familiar with KW,
Yeah.
but growing up there and growing up with not very many Desi people or Indian Pakistani people, I didn't speak the language very well.
Mhm.
I wasn't very culturally in tune. Um, and so going back to India afforded me the opportunity to kind of reconnect, I guess. This sounds like a background of a Dave Patel movie or something. Rediscovered myself.
And he does have the life rights to your story,
Yes,
right?
yes. If anybody's gonna make a movie on my life, yeah,
It'll
Dave
be Dev
Patel
Patel.
needs to needs to fatten up a little bit, and then he can play me.
Listen, Christian Bale can do
Loosen
it.
hair as well. He has glorious
I
hair.
assume Dave Patel can do it.
Yeah, I mean we've been in the
Just
talks.
just
I'm
start
not at
chugging.
liberty to speak about that on a podcast,
Of
though.
course, just start chugging melted ice cream for a beverage and bulk up
Yeah,
easily.
yeah,
But yeah, so how was your time back in the mother country, as it were?
yeah. It was absolutely phenomenal. Actually, I got to preface it with the first 6 months there were absolute. hell.
just,
Like it was
just like culture shock until
it
you started
was a
becoming
completely
acclimated.
different world and completely new environment. So I would say the first 6 months of that experience were quite challenging. Um, and there was a lot of, I guess, denial as well, where I
Mm.
was like, I didn't really realize that this was like on the exact opposite side of the globe,
Uh,
and it was a completely different cultural environment, economical environment. Everything was completely different,
mhm.
and so a lot of it was like, this can't be real. This can't be real. Like, I was still hanging on to the Canadian lifestyle
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Canadian way of life and trying to live the same way in India. So it was a lot of wrestling with the concept of being Indian and living in India. And so that's why I felt that the first 6 months were quite challenging because there was a lot of resistance on my end.
Mhm.
But soon after that, I made a lot of like local friends as well, and they really kind of helped me get into it, kind of accept the local lifestyle, culture, everything. And so I just kind of threw myself into it. And yeah, so I was like, I'm going to be here for the next 5, 6 years of my life. My early 20s, the formative years of my life.
Mhm.
I'm not going to spend this time resenting being here. I'm going to just throw myself into it and
Just let
take
it
as much of
take
the
over.
experience as I can.
Yeah.
And so that's when it became a very, very positive experience from that point.
Mhm. And how was the schooling side of things?
So the schooling side of things was pretty. I'm sure you guys have heard of like stereotypes of Indian schools and the Indian education system.
Maybe.
It's pretty brutal.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, it's very regimented. We had a dress code, kind of no uniforms, but we had to wear formal,
A
like
certain,
button down,
yeah.
tucked into formal dress pants, dress shoes. Had to wear lab coats all the time, even like non-clinical times. Like sitting in the classroom, we'd have to wear our lab coats. It's just like in the Indian heat as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then the training was all in English, but again, it was Indian people from India speaking English,
Mhm.
so there was a little bit of a barrier, but they were all efficient enough.
Gotcha.
To they met their purpose. So yeah.
Why use lot word when fewer
Hospital
do
side.
trick?
Sorry.
Why use lot word when fewer do trick? Stuff like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Something to that effect. Um, And then the hospital side, obviously, patient care was mostly in Hindi or a local language in
Mhm.
Hyderabad called
And there's
Telugu.
like a million dialects in India, from what I
Yeah, there's
understand.
like 22 official languages in India, and then it's just like after that, it's just crazy. Yeah, but Hindi is like the predominant language, at least in the northern part of India. Hyderabad is technically the south, but it's kind of right in the middle of the country.
Gotcha. Cool. And so you had family in the region to like support you as you
Yeah.
made that transition.
Hmm.
Um, had were these like relatives that you had seen, like had you traveled back to India like in your childhood and met them, or was it just like, by the way, I'm your family, I'm from
I
Canada and I'm here
exist.
now? Yeah.
Hello. You are
Just house me
applied
for the
to
next
love
5 to 6 years.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that, where I had visited India before, but before moving there in 2011, I had last visited in 2004,
Oh wow.
and before that, I never really went to India.
Mhm. At least not
Um,
when you were in like a conscious state
yeah, yeah, I was
and like
as
able
an
to
infant, I did,
vocalize thoughts. Yeah.
yeah. And even 2004 was just like a 2 week vacation with the family, so it's definitely not
Quality
enough.
bonding time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But having said that, I had first cousins there. So my dad's sister's kids, he has two sisters there, and then a huge extended family, like a really, really big extended family.
Mhm.
And in typical Indian tradition, a very well connected extended family. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm your dad's mother's second cousin's brother-in-law's neighbor. But yeah, I mean, they'll go to town for you. They'll They got your back,
Nice.
and everybody's a cousin. Like um there's no real defining relationship. It's just like if
Mhm.
they're similarly aged and the families know each other, they're cousins.
Yeah, and then if you're like a bit older, then they're like your uncle or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a lot of family support like that, and then a lot of friends that I made through school and like the neighborhood and stuff as well. So
Mhm.
I feel like that's the biggest factor in helping someone adjust to a new environment, the people that you meet. And same story here in Cincinnati. I've made a lot of great friends, and they've helped with settling down here. Obviously, it's not as big of a dramatic cultural difference.
Uh, did it take time to sort of acclimate coming back from India for so long, or was it just kind of like putting on an old hat um,
Uh,
when you came back to Canada or moved to Cincinnati?
so the only things that I had to adjust to were, well, so two different things. So in Canada, the first biggest adjustment I had was the driving, um, because in India we drive right side, so like
Oh yeah, yeah.
right side of the car, so left side of the road. Um, and everything's manual there. I still drive a stick shift here. So I used to shift with my left hand and steer with my right, and now it's like steer
Mhm.
left,
Just got to
shift right.
rewire your
Yeah,
CMOS.
and so going to the car, I would always walk to the passenger side when I was driving, and like my passenger would be like, "Wait, well, you're going to the wrong. You want me to drive? No, 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 I'll drive." And so that was pretty much the only adjustment coming back to
Mhm.
Canada. Um, and then I guess food as well. Um, I lived in downtown Toronto, so it wasn't so bad when I first came back.
Mhm.
Here in Cincinnati, everything closes by like 8:30.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so it's just like, yeah, there's really nothing that's open late or
Gotta
even open to a reasonable time. I think 10 p.m. is a good time for
so
restaurants to be open till.
yeah, that's pretty reasonable. But Cincinnati just not popping off
No,
like that Toronto life.
especially during COVID. Now is
Oh yeah.
everything still like kind of starting to reopen, but yeah, it's like 8:30 they run out of food or is last call, and then 9 p.m. the place shuts down. It's
Oh
like,
wow.
hmm.
Have you taken
Whereas
a
in
sort of
India, I would eat biryani at like 3 a.m. no problem.
was that biryani you would get from like a local like hole in the wall or family made it?
No,
Oh,
local
just
hole in the wall. Yeah. So
ha,
that was the other thing.
mhm,
In terms of acclimating my gut to the Indian environment.
mhm.
I'm sure you're familiar with traveler's diarrhea,
Yeah.
um, and just yeah.
I work at a travel insurance company. There's going to be a ton of claims for that.
Okay, there you go. So
The amount of times I see the word gastroenteritis, just like, oh, okay.
yeah, you'll see a lot of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in India, it's especially bad. Um, you can't visit India and not get sick.
Mhm.
It's just part and parcel of the deal. And so I was like, so initially I was drinking just boiled water and or just bottled water from, and I would be very strict. And I was like, I can't live 6 years like this.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, again, just baptism by fire. I just threw myself into it, and I just went and ate all the nasty like street food and got sick. And I got really, really sick very, very often. It was like pretty regular monthly episodes of diarrhea.
God damn.
Um, for the first year, I'd say
Yeah.
maybe 8 to 10 months.
And then you develop the gut bacteria or whatever that's needed to
Yeah.
not do
And
that.
then I had a gut made of steel. Like honestly, I could eat things that local people would be afraid of eating.
God damn. What a champ.
Yeah.
That's
I was
my
Indian AF. I
that's
don't
my
know if we're
goat.
allowed to cuss on here.
Oh, you're absolutely allowed to cuss.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Don't worry about
Indian
that. The only people listening to this, I assume, are adults. Like I can't imagine like my 4-year-old cousin listening to this, just like, what do you have to gain from this? You
hey,
don't know these
this is
people.
insights into life.
True.
Start them off early.
Getting to hear about other cultures that
Mhm.
they may not get to see. They'd be like, what's that guy? Why is he so dark? Is light on?
He doesn't look like me.
uh Yeah, that's uh incredible journey. Um, have you taken to sort of cooking for yourself now that your locale doesn't really facilitate being able to sort of eat whenever late into the night, or is just like, well, I'm gonna just switch my eating schedule to match where I'm living?
Yeah, you have to either adapt or die, and when it comes to food, it's quite literal. Obviously, I cook at home and I have food at home, so if I do get midnight munchies, then there's something to eat.
You have an out,
Having
something on the
said that,
satisfy.
though, like with my job and our hours, I
Mhm.
tend to sleep earlier and wake earlier. Unless I'm on nights, then obviously it's flipped.
Yeah.
But when you're on nights, you're at the hospital anyways, and the hospital cafeteria is there. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm
uh,
surprised I haven't gotten diarrhea from that.
it was that Indian training. You're
Yep.
you're, you're not getting you're not getting diarrhea ever again.
Yeah, exactly. If actually, I don't think I have. Hmm.
Hell yeah, dude.
There you go.
Iron stomach.
Yeah.
Just go to India for a year. Just eat
Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly. That's all you need.
So how's your last year in Cincinnati been?
So Cincinnati's been absolutely incredible. It's been a lot more than I ever expected. I moved here with some reservations because it's well, Ohio is a bit of a swing state, but
Mhm.
right now it's pretty red. Um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I don't know how political I want to make this, but I mean, coming from a place like Toronto, which is so diverse and so culturally accepting, and so
Mhm.
um, it was there was a little bit of apprehension coming here.
Mhm.
And so like you were saying, I was working in Toronto area hospitals for about a year before matching here. I was doing research there, and I was primarily at Toronto General, and then across the street at Princess Margaret Cancer Center.
Mhm.
And both of those places had on-site like prayer rooms.
Yep.
So in Toronto, at Toronto General, there was like a dedicated musalla or like a Muslim prayer space,
Mhm.
which was like outfitted with the prayer mats and everything, and you could just go whenever and just crank out a quick prayer or two, and then head
I
back and
love
continue,
referring to your praying
you know,
as cranking one out.
cranking it out,
Yeah.
just grind through it.
Just get
But
on your knees and get down and
yeah,
dirty.
yeah. And then Princess Margaret also had like they had a bigger room which was just like a multi-faith space,
Mhm.
but it was very very nice. And I work at a Catholic institution here, a
Mhm.
Catholic hospital, um, and there's a chapel on site, and within the chapel there's a carpeted area with like a prayer rug and stuff, so we were expected to pray there, and that's kind of like our prayer spot as well.
Mhm.
But initially, I mean, it was probably unreasonable, but with everything that had happened leading, or just like my experience as a Canadian on the outside looking into the uh, economic or like more of the political situation in the U.S. where
Mhm.
you know young Muslim kids were getting shot over a parking space and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, there was, I guess, an unfounded fear based off of limited stories like that,
Mhm.
where I was quite hesitant to be in a Catholic hospital in the chapel doing Muslim prayers
In a
um,
red state. Yeah.
in a red state. I was like, someone is gonna walk in here with a gun and be like, "Not in my hospital." But
Hustle
again,
up like a
that was
bitch.
probably irrational. Yeah, lock and load. It's time to get down to business.
But you're still here, so I assume that hasn't happened yet.
That has not happened. Thankfully, no. People here are actually exceptionally nice. And you
Mhm.
always hear the stereotype of Canadians being nice, and then it's like I don't really know where it comes from because people here are not any less nice,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. That's a whole bunch of negatives. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No, no. I think it landed.
I think it does. Yeah,
In any case, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
that's good. It's like professors in India.
Yeah.
It meets the purpose.
uh, So yeah, so you've been matched into your hospital. I think the last time we spoke, you had just like it was still like a lot of learning at the time.
Hmm.
How has that evolved?
Yeah, so I'm doing what's called internal medicine,
Mhm.
and internal medicine is a little bit less defined as compared to other specialties where
Like
people just
oncology and stuff.
like, oh, pediatrics, yeah, okay, you're a kid doctor,
Yeah.
or it's like, ooh, what's an internal medicine? It's like everything on the inside. But yeah, no, internal medicine is basically primarily adult medicine,
Mhm.
so that's our general population. And it's mostly acute care, so in hospital setting,
Gotcha.
where family medicine is more chronic care and outpatient based. Having said that, there's a huge branch of internal medicine, which is primary care, but again, that's mostly focused on
Mhm.
adults that are and non-gynecological issues. Although
Yeah.
we still have to do pap smears for some reason, but yeah, you gotta still know it. But yeah, so I'm in internal medicine, and in the states, it's a 3-year training program. And so your first year as an intern, it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of hard work. It's just learning by volume as well.
Mhm.
Your seniors kind of just push the entire patient load on you, and you basically learn by experience, and it's
Gotcha.
it's pretty fantastic. It's exhausting, but depending on the mentors that you have, the seniors that you work with, the attendings that you work with, it's a fantastic time to develop as a professional and to really learn the practice of medicine.
Mhm.
So intern year was very difficult but rewarding, and so now I'm a second year, a PGY2, postgraduate year two,
Yep.
and this is where we start to transition into a senior role. And now, right now, in the beginning half of the second year, we usually do more specialty services or consult services where we're going into the subspecialties of internal medicine. So that's like cardiology or gastroenterology, nephrology, etc. And so we get to kind of experience what further subspecialized training would be like, and to kind of guide our career path from there.
Mhm. Have you thought about have you thought forward about like a particular branch that you want to head down?
Hmm. So even before matching to residency here, I was doing research in Toronto, and so I want to kind of continue with a similar theme. So I was working in geriatric oncology in Toronto, so it's old people with cancer,
Yep.
and so I want to, yeah, I want to be a cancer doctor when I grow up.
A noble line of work.
You know, that's literally how I tell everyone who asks. It's like, yeah, so what do you want to do later on? It's like, yeah, I want to be a cancer doctor when I grow up. It's just like, when's that gonna happen, Zuhair? Honestly, it probably won't happen. I'm not gonna grow up. I'll be a cancer doctor, inshallah. That's the plan.
Yeah, I think in order to be the cancer doctor you want to be, you may have to go fully bald. So just get
Yeah,
rid of that last bit on the top there, and
yeah. This was my hairline before medical school. This is like medical school, this was residency, and so fellowship is probably gonna take it all the way back.
yeah. Uh, bit of a dark joke, but you know, once you go fully bald, you kind of like blend in with the patients in the oncology ward.
Yeah.
Swish.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to laugh at that. Disclaimer: the
Yep.
views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of my own and not of my
Yes.
institution.
Yes. Well, damn, dude. Really pulling for you. Hope you get to achieve the success that you're setting your sights on. It seems to have mostly panned out so far.
So far,
Uh,
so good. Knock
yeah.
on wood. Gotta keep trucking.
um, so I do have a question here from our previous guest. It's actually a two-parter. Part one is when are you coming back to Canada, and part two is uh, in order to I'm gonna preserve the guy's identity. But
Oh
any
dang! I
and,
was
and It's a funny thing that require that makes it basically makes so that if anybody wants to know who the person who asked the question was, they have to go back and look at it, the title to the previous episode. But
Okay.
28-year-old Caucasian male, he has a rash across his entire back. What does he do?
Well, a rash across his entire back.
Yeah, that's the way he worded it.
Okay. Well, I would have to see him in person, and I think the first step would be a rectal examination.
Gotcha. All right, I'll let him know.
Yeah.
He has to prepare to travel, then quarantine, and then get treatment.
Yeah. And I'll bring my gloves and lube.
You just have those on hand at all times, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Uh, but do you have any intentions of returning to Canada, either short or long term?
yes, very, very short term actually. Um, so the way it works is I'm here on a visa.
Mhm.
So generally, to visit, Canadians don't need visas to just visit the states.
Yeah,
But in
just
order to
as
work,
a
you
sort
need
of
a work visa or training visa.
agreement. Yeah,
Yeah.
but once you start working or like training, that's where the government comes in and says, "Hey,
Hey,
sign
you're
all
not
these
from around here.
documents." Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm on what's called a J1 visa, and so that's a exchange visitor trainee visa,
Yep.
where the whole intention of the visa is for cultural exchange.
Mhm.
Um, Now, how much of a cultural difference is there between Canada and the US? Probably not as much as some other places,
For sure.
but the intention of the visa is you come here, you train here, and then you go back to where you came from and kind of share your experience with wherever you're from.
Mhm. You do your PD write up, a nice little report on your travels,
Yeah,
your
pretty much,
experiences.
and then you try to and then the thing is medicine itself is very global, and, you try to learn from different practices in different places and try to do the best thing for your patients. And so that ends up being a very global experience.
Mhm.
And so the intention of the J1 visa is after you're done your training, there's a mandatory 2-year home return where you have to go home to whichever country said it's okay for you to come to the US to train and do a 2-year stay there.
Mhm.
And so I do intend on going back to Canada after I'm done my training. Now, whether I go back after I'm done all of my training or come back to continue my training is basically what I'm trying to figure out now.
I
So
see.
I'm actually going to be writing one of the Canadian licensing exams in about a month and a half. So wish me luck. And then trying to see if I can come back to continue my like fellowship or specialty training in Canada.
Oh wow. Fingers fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, very
Uh
thoughtful question. Previous guest,
oh yeah.
anonymous
He's
previous
full of
guest,
them. Uh,
28-year-old Caucasian male who needs a rectal exam.
they're in high demand right now. Um, so obviously the one of the bigger stories of 2020 is this whole little pandemic thing. How is that?
Pandemic.
How has COVID-19 impacted your hospital and like your surroundings? Basically, how has your quarantine been?
It's been a very interesting experience. I'll say that.
Mhm.
So I guess we first started hearing about COVID and everything late December last year, early
Yeah.
January. Um, And I was like, "Yeah, okay, it's probably not gonna be that big of a deal." And
Mhm.
then
It'll
you
be
hear
like
about
H1N1 or whatever, just like
yeah,
a big,
exactly. I thought it would be a
a lot of
limit.
hullabaloo, but overall kind of a blip.
Yeah, more of a blip. Yeah. Didn't end up being that.
We were
I think
fools.
I think the bigger, alarm bells were, like, what happened in Italy with, ICUs being at full capacity, and
Mhm.
they're having such a high mortality rate. And then we started hearing first cases pop up in, like, Seattle and things like that. And then New York got hit
Yeah,
really, really
just
hard.
the big ports of entry to a lot of Chinese tourism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then so Cincinnati itself is a little bit more secluded and isolated
Mhm.
as compared to other major metropolitan areas like New York and etc.
Yeah.
But so we didn't get hit as hard. And when we did get hit, it was a lot more delayed, so we were better prepared for it. New York got hit hard and got hit early, so they didn't really have systems in place for that.
Yeah,
Whereas
they had to get
our
that boat
hospital kind of had,
for
sorry?
medical. They had to get like that boat in for like medical treatment to like hold
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then they had dermatologists managing ventilators and stuff.
Mhm.
Like skin doctors shouldn't. I mean, like,
Nothing
yeah,
against skin doctors, but
yeah,
stay in your
and
lane.
yeah. So actually, that would be someone that could look at our previous guest's rash. Actually, uh, and if they're on a ventilator, God forbid, I can take care of that.
It's all about the referrals.
Yeah, it's a team effort. But yeah, no, so we kind of went into shutdown mode pretty early on, where our organization made sure we had more than adequate supply of PPE first and
Mhm.
foremost. We shut down visitors, so there's no visitors at the hospital unless absolutely necessary. So more like end
Smart.
of life discussions and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the best things that came out of the whole thing is we were required to wear formals when we're not on call. So shirt and tie, lab coat, the whole 9 yards for clinics and just regular wards when you're not on call.
Mhm.
Uh, and we would wear scrubs only if we were on call or on nights or in ICU or whatever. Now we wear scrubs all the time.
Nice.
And so it's been pretty fantastic. It's cut down my time to get ready in the morning from 15 minutes to about 2. So
Nice.
it's it's been pretty nice. And I feel like it's going to be a difficult transition back to wearing regular clothes. I
Just make it
haven't
a
been one.
voluntary option. Just like if you want to wear scrubs all the time, go for it.
Yeah, that's how it should be. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I also had a little bit of time off when it was kind of the surge here in
Mhm.
Cincinnati. So when we were on electives or non-core rotations, so non-core, if you were off of the floors, nights, or ICU or clinic, I guess even no, actually even clinic we did from home. So we were doing telephone encounters.
Oh yeah, telehealth.
Yeah,
The big sort of innovation of
yeah,
well, not innovation, adaptation rather. So
adaptation. Yeah, I think that there's going to be a major role for it moving forward,
for
even
sure.
post pandemic. I think it definitely aids in accessibility, although a lot of the times it's like you can't really do much over the phone.
Mhm.
It's like, hey,
Yeah.
are you checking your blood pressures? It's like, no, not really. It's like, okay, well, I mean, I
What's your
don't really have
temperature?
anything to go off of now.
Yeah.
So, whereas in the office, you just slap on a cuff and you can tell if it's like, okay, you're not taking your meds or they're not working and we need to make some adjustments.
For sure.
Over the phone, you're kind of handicapped. But yeah, so that was probably one of the bigger things as well with our clinic or outpatient experience. It's been a lot of telehealth
Mhm.
stuff, and then also initially we got iPads all over the hospital, kind of outfitted inside the room and outside. So if there was like a COVID rule outpatient, if or just to like reduce exposure. Just do like video calls from like inside outside, and then one person would go in and do an exam or whatever, and then come out. So a lot of adaptations, and I think it's still a continuous process where things are still evolving.
For sure. Especially especially in America.
Yeah, yeah. We've had our challenges there.
Still in wave one.
Yeah,
Woo. Um,
yeah. And then with September being here and like flu season, I just
mhm.
don't know how much. And schools kind of reopening up and stuff too. It's just like sometimes a really bad flu season puts your ICU over the brink. It's like then having COVID underlying all of that.
Mhm. Can't be taking risks with a
Yeah,
simple flu
there's really
versus the more complex uh coronavirus.
hmm So yeah, a
Yeah.
very potentially dangerous situation, but hopefully
Hopefully it
it
comes
will.
to a amicable resolution. No,
Mhm.
no, no major hiccups.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. Um, Politically speaking, this isn't generally a political show. How is the air, like the sort of political air in your space, been reacting to the fact that this is an election year?
Mhm.
Um,
4 more years.
oh God.
4 more years. um, yeah, that's pretty much. I feel like just because of the availability
Mhm.
or the choice, I feel like things are more likely to continue being the way they are.
That incumbent advantage really really popping up, and I guess they're called the Cincinnati Reds for a reason.
Yeah, I guess so.
Uh,
I don't know if that's the story, but I mean, again, Cincinnati is a little bit more metropolitan. Again, more rural areas are a lot
mhm.
more um, red.
Yeah,
Um, Cincinnati's is probably more purple. It's a little
mhm.
wishy washy.
Fair enough.
And then Ohio is historically more of a swing state.
Mhm.
But I yeah, just because of the candidates and who they are, I feel like if the Democrats did have a more appealing candidate,
Yeah. Good word, good word.
there would be more of a chance. I just feel like the base is so strong with Trump, and with the alternative being what it is, I feel like again,
Yeah, it's definitely not it's not the most popular choice for the undecided.
right, right.
Uh, commonly the thing that a lot of people point to the differences between America and Canada, and having been on both sides now, is the cost of healthcare.
Hmm.
How has it been working on the front lines of sort of uh, that schism is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. So as a provider, you don't necessarily notice it.
Mhm. Say
Um,
it's for the billing department to basically do that.
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the delivery of healthcare is pretty similar.
Mhm.
Um, Costs here are definitely inflated. Um, Back when I was in Toronto, I was doing research, and a lot of one of my projects was around costs. It was a cost effectiveness study, and so we would look at costs from the Ontario billing schedule and things like that, and then compared that to American data for very similar tests and procedures. Billing would be a little bit higher,
Mhm.
sometimes significantly
Yeah.
higher. Um, and that's accounting for the currency difference as well, like
Mhm.
putting on even keel. Um, so it's definitely there, but again, over here, a lot of the times it's really only an issue for the people who don't have insurance.
Mhm.
And now there is like a baseline like Medicare, Medicaid. Um, so everyone should technically have some level of insurance coverage. How good that coverage is highly variable.
Oh yeah,
So some
incredibly
plans,
volatile.
yeah, exactly. So and a lot of the insurance schemes just don't make sense as well. There's very expensive things that are absolutely necessary. Like EpiPens was a huge thing
Mhm.
where they're incredibly expensive, but they're life saving for people who need them. And some insurance plans would just not cover them.
Mhm.
It's- insulin can sometimes be really expensive,
Oh, for
and if
sure.
you're diabetic, and if you're on insulin, you need that stuff. So it's just like Yeah, it definitely poses a challenge, uh, especially in our in a teaching service outpatient facility like our clinics.
Mhm,
We generally have a lower income population, sometimes a lot of uninsured population as well,
mhm,
and so a lot of the times they're not compliant with their medication. They're not taking what they're supposed to, and a lot of the times I feel like they get falsely blamed or painted with that label, when it's more of an accessibility issue rather than a willingness issue.
mhm.
So I feel like that's definitely one of the bigger challenges with the system here in the states.
Gotcha. I had a question. I'm just trying to figure out how to word it. Um, do you find that like your colleagues are pretty empathetic to that sort of thing, or is it because like that's what they've known to be healthcare that is just kind of like whatever?
I think it's very patient dependent.
Gotcha.
I feel like some of the patients do um, kind of endorse that label of non-compliance. A lot of them do have that callousness around their healthcare, and sometimes that label is earned and deserved.
Mhm,
I feel like the patients that do have that kind of financial limitation or issues with accessibility do garner the empathy of colleagues. Um, Pretty consistently. I feel like people do have kind of a soft spot for it, and a lot of the times we will try to work around it where like, hey, if a certain medication isn't covered, we'll try to do something similar that might be covered. We try to work with their insurance companies. There's a lot of peer-to-peer stuff as well. So physicians that work for insurance companies will give them a call and be like, hey, this is my patient, this is what he's got, this he would really benefit from this intervention or this medication or device or whatever. I think it should be covered, and then it's kind of like a back and forth dialogue. But yeah,
gotcha.
when I think a lot of medicine is the delivery of the care as well. It's not as easy as just writing a script and just sending a patient out the door.
Mhm,
It's making sure that they get it, making sure they're able to take it, making sure they're able to monitor things. So if it's like a blood pressure medication, making sure they have a cuff and they're checking it regularly, um, taking their medications regularly, and then diet, exercise, all that stuff. It's not just a prescription; it's a delivery of the care, and so you kind of have to do that and make sure that people who do have accessibility issues are able to work around that.
very good.
I feel like
Uh,
that was a very interview type of
yeah,
answer.
pretty much. That's what the show boils down to. I'll have like I'll like one real haymaker of a question for everyone, and that was
Yeah.
yours. So nimbly handled.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
solid response. Now, obviously, as much as sort of like inpatient outpatient care has been a big worry about uh sort of people's physical health during COVID. Like mental health is also like something that's uh been kind of a major talking point amongst at least people I know. How's your mental health been?
For me, COVID has been so I feel like a lot of the mental health challenges that have rising up in like the quarantine setting,
Mhm.
where people are at home all the time. They're not able to go out and they're not able to carry out with their day-to-day activities. And sometimes when people have underlying mental health issues to start off with, being in that kind of restricted environment um, kind of exacerbates it, just makes
Mhm.
it that much worse. People who are in, say, a dysfunctional relationship where the husband and wife aren't necessarily getting along as well, but they're at work all the time, so it doesn't matter as
Yeah,
much, but they're all at
now they're just
home and just
together the
like
whole
getting
time.
space all the time. I
Yeah.
actually had a patient the other day, similar type of story.
Oh wow.
Um, Her husband got laid off because of COVID, actually, and just at home all the time, not getting along. yeah, subsequent
Yikes.
medical complications leading to an admission.
Mm.
But yeah, so I feel like a lot of the mental health challenges have come from being at home all the time, being secluded, and not having that same interaction with people. I feel like being able to carry out a day to day, more of a regimented schedule, or just having routine interaction with people, like face to face, is kind of therapeutic. Again, different people have different things that work for them,
Mm.
but that would probably work for me if I were in that type of a situation. For me personally, in terms of mental health with the whole pandemic, um, it's been more of a stress type of thing because of kind of like that sense of impeding doom. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, oh my God, we're all gonna die,
Just
or
just like the mixture of like uncertainty and like threat.
right. A threat and the threat for us as providers is kind of a twofold process, right? Where the threat is, yeah, everybody's going to get sick and you're going to have crazy workload. um, and when that first surge was coming around, we had several meetings around how we would tackle that. We had kind of emergency plans where if the ICU hits a certain number, we would have a backup team that comes in, and we had planned as far down as involving surgical residents and OB-GYN residents
Oh
to
wow.
come in and help out, um, if it ever got to that type of a volume. But again, so that sort of thing is very stressful to think about.
Mhm.
Um, and then the second aspect, like I was saying, it's a twofold thing where, yeah, there's patients getting sick and you're in charge of taking care of them, but there's also that very real threat of you being sick.
Mhm.
Again, as providers, we're very much exposed.
Yeah.
Um, Thankfully, I live alone here. Like, I just come home and I have nobody to expose, so it's not as big of a deal. But I have other colleagues who are married and have children, or have their parents at home as well, elderly parents, and so for them, it's just like, okay, they're trying to stay safe while still delivering good quality care and not exposing their loved ones or themselves.
Mhm.
Um, there have been residents within my program as well who have had COVID infection. Um, Nobody ended up being on a breathing machine or anything so far, knock on wood. They've been, just getting fevers for a few days, losing their sense of smell, out of work for a week, and then back in action
Wow.
after quarantine time. Um, but it's very it's it's scary. It's just like, anything can happen. It's like, if I don't have a good enough seal, and if I'm, this one time I was on nights, and when you're on nights, you're the call team. There was a COVID patient that coded, and they had an arrest, and so I'm
Mhm.
doing chest compressions on a COVID patient. Of course, you're wearing all the PPE and everything, but it's
Yeah, but
just
it's just
like,
like
that's kind of a
the
aerosolizing procedure. I'm
the
going
virus
down on
itself is tiny. Any small opening is just like
right, exactly. Well,
you're
it's
hit.
it's it's a little nerve wracking, but
Mhm.
at the same time, it's part and parcel of the job. So,
And we thank you for doing it.
well,
Any horror or like war stories from the job so far?
nothing terribly negative. Um, I will say I had a very emotionally moving experience earlier on. I would think it was my first stint of ICU,
Mhm.
where I had a patient who was a female who was very similarly aged, actually the exact same age as me, who had come in after being found down and was basically brain dead.
Mhm.
Um, and so the decision, like, she was on life support for a couple of days, seeing if there would be some recovery, but she wasn't making any recovery. And so having that conversation with the family, and that was my first time doing something like that.
Mhm.
And then walking through the whole procedure of getting a life center, or like an organ donation facility like involved, or and then walking through all the way to the withdrawal of care, pronouncing the patient like when they pass, and then taking them to the OR and everything. That whole experience was very. It was a high emotional experience,
Yeah, of course.
and then just being the same age as the patient as well kind of factored into it a lot. It was just like, it's crazy how just a few different circumstances in life can make things so different. Like
Mhm.
like we both came into the world at the very same time, and yet she's the one in bed on the ventilator and I'm the one providing care. It could very easily have been the other way around. And
Wow.
it was just kind of like a whoa type of moment.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, I'm never gonna forget her. I never talked to her. She was unconscious
of
on
course.
admission and never recovered. Never really had a connection with her, but definitely talking to the family and just just that experience of, hey, just letting them know that this is the situation we're in and there's really not a favorable outcome to it.
Mhm.
And then walking through the process of, you know, the whole withdrawal of care and being there with the family and watching the monitor, waiting for her to pass, and then doing a death exam right there. And it's just like very, very intense.
Uh, do you think there was a uh, so I assume that was your first time sort of being in that scenario where like uh you had to pronounce someone deceased. At any point during your training leading up to that, did you realize that like or when again, words are not my strong suit.
But
Uh, Sort of at what point on your journey to becoming a doctor did you sort of have to accept that like you're not going to be able to save everyone?
hmm, I think it was probably so when I was doing research in Toronto, it was geriatric oncology,
Indeed.
so that's older people with cancer. So you're automatically starting off at kind of a disadvantage. First of all, with them being elderly,
Mhm.
they're already closer to that end of life in terms of just timeline.
Yeah,
Um,
just of natural
and then
causes, and
having a
then
diagnosis like cancer,
where the treatments
um,
are pretty strenuous.
right. So I feel like although that wasn't a clinical role, I wasn't actively caring for patients. I was doing more research.
Mhm.
That was a very eye-opening experience where I think, well, death is just an actuality, right? It's the most certain thing. Like
Mhm.
everybody has to taste death.
Yeah.
Valar Morghulis. But and that is the extent of my Valyrian, so I'll stop there. Um, it's just like the role of a physician isn't to save lives, as
Mhm.
as as non-instinctual as that sounds.
Mhm.
It's
It's
about delivering care, and sometimes what's best for the patient isn't necessarily life-prolonging
mhm.
maneuvers. Um, Again, that's not a decision that we make as a provider. That's something that the patient makes. The patient's family or their power of attorney
Mhm.
would decide that. But a lot of the times, your role as a provider is to kind of guide that thought process as well, um, and being responsible with it as well. I feel like a lot of the time it's very easy to give up, and if a patient says that they want to live no matter what,
You have to
um,
respect those wishes.
you have to respect that. And it's like it doesn't matter what you think. You can't be making bets on their outcomes. If they want everything done, you do everything. And I mean within reason. I think
Yeah.
there's limits to that as well. Um, but and the thing is, you have a moral and ethical obligation to your patient. They're entrusting you with their life, their care, and you have to be able to sleep at night knowing that you did everything you can,
Mhm.
um, while respecting their wishes. So it's a balance of that. It's a balance of doing everything you can while trying to save life, but at the same time realizing that everybody will eventually die, and their life is not actually in your hands.
Mhm.
It's like it was actually something that one of our ICU attendings told us. There was a patient who was on life support, no, no, like on pressors to keep their blood pressure up, on a breathing machine, on a kidney replacement machine, the whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
They're in like multi-organ failure. They're
Basically just struggling to live on their own, but every tool in the book is being used to keep them going.
Exactly. And there was a discussion on kind of more end of life discussion where the children of the patient were like, "Oh, we're waiting for her sister to come in from out of town. If you could just keep her alive until then."
Mhm.
It's not a switch. Like it's not if her time was written for an hour before her sister shows up, it doesn't matter what type of life support I'm giving her. If she's going to die, then she's going to die then. It's not like doctors can just keep people alive forever.
Mhm.
It's not like we hold that key. um so it's not a matter of just flipping the switch, turning off everything. Actually, we've had cases where we do withdraw care, and then the patient lives on for another few days. It takes them like a week or so to pass. Sometimes it's like the next second. So life and death is not in our hands. We're just kind of doing what we can to support the patient.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Uh, Speaking of support, um, what's your sort of support network like locally? You said you've made, a bunch of friendships, relationships down there. Um, do you still keep in touch with like people from your past as well, or is it just like kind of where you are at the present?
Yeah. No. So I feel like with medicine, you need to have a lot of support,
Mhm.
uh, just because of how stressing it is, and a lot of the times you need to have support from people that are familiar, that can kind of understand, that can relate. So I think a lot of my support in terms of a professional setting comes from my colleagues and peers, a lot of the co-residents that I work with.
Mhm.
A lot of good friendships that have developed just through work itself. And then expanding beyond that as well, like the community at large. It's nice to have people outside of medicine to just kind of shift focus and just change that frame of mind.
Yeah.
Um, get a breath of fresh air, really. So it's nice to have that as well. And then obviously you live your life developing relationships, and it's important to maintain those and stay in touch with the people who matter. And
Mhm.
that's part of the intent of this
Indeed,
podcast.
it is. That's what we're here for.
So when you have meaningful experiences that you've shared with someone, irrespective of at what point that was during your life, it's nice to sometimes revisit those similar characters and kind of rehash those, relive those experiences.
Indeed.
So
Um,
yeah, I'm still in touch with everybody back in Canada.
like,
A lot of friends in India still that I talk with regularly, despite the time difference.
um, so shifting away from work for a bit, like how do you find yourself spending your free time? Whatever may be available to you.
So yeah.
Obviously, you talked about a little bit of basketball. Is that the only sport you follow, or
Oh no, so I follow hockey quite
oh
intently.
right.
Yeah.
How's the Stanley Cup bubble?
So the Penguins got eliminated, so I kind of haven't really been paying attention much, just highlights here and there. Um, and yeah, it's just not as exciting.
The roar of the crowd is
Yeah,
pointedly absent.
right. And I feel like that was a huge factor in hockey, especially.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you can watch all these like YouTube videos of like chants from the audience and stuff, just like focusing on one player. It's like, you suck. It's all your fault. The entire like stadium just like going at this one poor guy, just like,
He's doing his
oh
best, goddamn
yeah. But yeah, it's like hockey crowds really get into it. It's a
it.
very lively environment, and then just like watching things in the bubble, it's just like a little bit. It's like
Jarring.
it's a weird experience, like a minor league tournament.
Any pastimes outside of sports
Hmm.
currently?
Yeah. So actually, so during the whole COVID, like when it was like the surge, so we
Mhm.
weren't doing elective rotations. So I was scheduled for an elective, but ended up doing a remote elective. So at that point, we were just calling our patients and just making sure they were okay, just checking up on their meds and things like
Mhm.
that. So it was not that much work. So I was pretty much just home all the time for about 3 weeks. And growing up, there were always two things that I really wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to skateboard,
Hell yeah.
which I need to still do,
Damn.
and I wanted to learn how to play guitar. And so
Ooh.
I was like, now is as good as the time as any. So right before I started my quarantine period, I hopped onto Amazon, found a nice little beginner guitar, and I ordered an acoustic to my house, and I started playing.
Hell yeah, dude. That's sick.
Yeah,
I remember you being like a big like Billy Talent, like Silverstein kind of guy. So I
yeah,
was just like, oh, is like what kind of guitar is he gonna fucking shred on? And they're like
yeah.
acoustic guitar. I was like, well, that'll do.
Yeah, no, so it's actually the funniest thing. Like, so people are pretty. I'm not shy to advertise my musical preferences, and so people are generally quite surprised that I play like an acoustic guitar, and a lot of what I play is actually um, just like even traditional, like more desi, like classical stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just like, okay, well, you're a bit of a like a metalhead, and you're like, so what? So that's what I tell them. It's like, yeah, I enjoy listening to it, but I'm not sure if I would enjoy playing it.
I see.
Um,
You'll,
well,
you'll 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 leave that to the professionals.
yeah, I'll leave that to the professionals. I think I do want to kind of delve into that a little bit. I think now that I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with just the mechanics of a guitar with the acoustic. I think the next step would be to kind of graduate to an acoustic, maybe a nice 7 string gent type guitar, and
Hell yeah,
just
dude.
chug along with some metalcore.
I saw a post. Yeah, I think it was either yesterday or earlier this morning. Apparently, like Silverstein's doing like a drive-in concert like somewhere in Ontario. It's like
Oh,
I kind of wish I drove so I could just go there. I think it's in like Ancaster or
that's
something.
that's a really cool idea. It's
It's a
actually
concert
good
experience with the
that
safety of being in a car.
sorry.
It's a concert experience with the safety of being in a car.
Yeah, that's really cool. Would you do like windows down, or would they like stream to your car?
So I think they have like a PA system as like the sort of primary thing, but they'll also like have it hooked up to like broadcast to an FM frequency or something.
Yeah, you can just tune in.
Yeah,
That's really
for
cool.
for whatever cars still have a radio attached these days.
Yeah, right.
How do you work this thing? Turn on Sirius XM.
Right. But yeah, no, there was actually going to be a Silverstein concert here in Cincinnati,
Oh wow.
and I was like buying tickets for it, and then they postponed it, and then ultimately ended up canceling it.
Mhm.
Doing a tour. It was like a 15-year anniversary of Discovering the Waterfront, one of
Yeah.
their earlier albums. So
If you know, you know.
yeah, if you know, you know. Yeah, good
uh,
old emo days.
oh yeah. I was doing like Twitch things, which is kind of like karaoke earlier this morning. Just like, oh yeah, there's still like there was newfound glory in the track. I was just like, well, we'll do some of that. We'll do Adam's song, and then
Oh, there
we'll
you
and then we'll crush some Backstreet Boys to finish it off.
go. Nice, nice. The
Really,
middle school.
real, yeah, man. Really, just sending it back. Just throwbacks after throwback.
Yeah, that's actually my entire like playlist right now too. It's all I haven't really come across anything new recently.
Mhm.
Although there is like a hardcore band out of like I guess they're from Hamilton.
Hmm,
They're called Counterparts, and that's kind of been my thing over the last year or so.
nice. I have some friends who are active in like the Hamilton music scene. I'll see if they can drum up any recommendations because I think musically your taste may be kind of aligned. So I'll try to slide you some recs.
Yeah, for sure. Hit me up.
um, so Zuhair, as someone who has lived in a few different locales so far, what are your sort of major uh, as someone who's currently on that J1 cultural exchange visa?
Yeah,
Um, what would you say have been your sort of biggest takeaways from some of the places that you've lived that you've brought with you, either throughout your life or like to specific new ventures?
that's a really good question. Um, so for me, knowing who I am, I'm a big food guy, so I focus on that a lot. Whenever I'm planning trips, it'll be like, okay, best like top 10 halal restaurants in this whatever city, and it's like, okay, I got to check out that place, whatever. Um, and so that's pretty much how I plan my trips. It's around whatever food is available there.
My man,
And
that
yeah,
I don't go on many trips, but every time I like of the few times I've done it, I'm just like, oh yeah, we're gonna look up the spots and we're gonna go
yeah.
to the spots.
Yeah. No, so I always plan out my trips pretty like thoroughly. So it's like things to see, things to eat. I always have the two columns.
Oh yeah.
So irrespective of where I'm going. And so having lived in India, I actually traveled quite a fair bit back and forth between India and Canada when I was visiting home. And because I was traveling across the world and with the benefits of a Canadian passport and being um, able to get visas on arrival in a lot of places or being able to visit places without visas as well. I figured now that I'm traveling like all this much, I might as well try to see as much of the world as possible as well. So actually, on my last trip back, so I kind of gave myself a little grad trip. So I flew the other way around, and so I stopped in Hong Kong for a
Mhm.
day and then came back. And so when I was planning my Hong Kong trip, I was like, okay, these are all like things that I need to see. All these places, like I need to go to this monastery, I need to go Victoria Peak and all that. It's
Sick.
like, okay, I also need to try all this food. It's like, yeah, like Peking duck. I need to try like Hong Kong egg tarts and things. So it's like the food is a big part of the experience,
Mhm.
and so kind of cycling back, Waterloo, there was really not much in terms of a standout cuisine or a
Yeah.
culinary experience. So for me, it was really more of just like the home food experience, like
Mhm.
my mom's cooking. And then Toronto. So the best thing about Toronto for me with my dietary restrictions as well, I only eat halal meat.
Mhm.
Is there was a really wide variety of halal options as
Mm.
compared to other places in North America. So you get a lot of halal options and you get a variety of it too. So in Toronto, like it's not just like Arabic food or Desi food or um, a couple burger joints here and there that are
Mhm.
halal. It's literally anything you could possibly ever want, you can find a halal alternative to. Like there's halal Korean barbecue in downtown
Yeah.
Toronto. It's absolutely incredible. Like
the,
versatility there.
the freedom is outstanding.
Exactly, and like chicken and waffles and stuff, you get
Oh
halal
hell
chicken and
yeah, dude.
waffles. Like it's the great. And so I lived on near Spadina in College in downtown Toronto, which is like right near Kensington Market.
Yeah.
And so in Kensington Market, there's a couple different like really like fancy like gourmet halal burger places, which were like my go-to spots. Shout out to Top Gun, Burgernator, Aussies. These three places were like kind of my go-to places, and they always had these ridiculous, over-the-top like huge ass
Creations.
burgers that were absolutely like delicious. So that was probably a big takeaway from Toronto. And then obviously India, you can imagine all the food stories there, like roadside like kebabs and stuff,
Yeah.
and everything was halal where I was in Hyderabad. There's a large Muslim presence there, so you could like pretty much everything was halal. um, biryani, obviously, and Hyderabadi biryani is the best type of biryani, hands down. And then, yeah, so and then just having the availability of food whenever you wanted it. Like 4 a.m., you want biryani, go for it. Like you'll find it. So it was all good.
Sick.
Cincinnati is, I guess, like the special thing is chili.
Yeah, Skyline Chili or whatever.
Yeah, Skyline. Yeah, you're familiar.
Yeah,
I'm
like
mad. Yeah,
I've heard tale of the Cincinnati legendary spot.
yeah. I don't really see what all the fuss is about. I
Me
feel like
neither.
significantly inebriated to enjoy the chili. I feel like it's proper, like just drunk food.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so I mean, I've had like a vegetarian version of the chili from like another franchise called Gold Star,
Mm,
and I guess granted it's not authentic chili, so maybe I didn't have the full experience. And I mean, I think it's enjoyable. I think it's worth trying, but it's definitely not something that I would want to eat over and over again.
fair enough.
Now, poutine is a different
Hell yeah,
experience.
dude.
That is different. Like that is sloppy, and that is your
It,
good
it,
drunk food, I guess.
is that something that
But
you've been able to find down there in the States?
nope,
It's insane to me how that isn't a thing. Like
it
like
blows my mind.
like
They're
Wisconsin has pretty famous cheese curds. It's just a matter of getting fries and gravy. Like why is this
right.
such a
How
holdup?
difficult is that, right? Wisconsin has great cheese curds. I actually interviewed when I was doing residency interviews at a program in Milwaukee, and so again, like I said, when I plan out trips,
Yeah.
I plan food factor. And so there was this big cheese factory out in Milwaukee that I wanted to visit. And they have the squeakiest cheese curds. Like they're absolutely fantastic. They have really good cheese curds.
Yeah.
It's like, why not? There's no poutine anywhere.
You could always just like open a late night smokes poutineery location in Cincinnati if things go south.
Yeah,
No
I think I
competition, time wise or cuisine wise.
have a complete monopoly
Yeah.
over the late night poutine market.
Um, before we progress further on you, are there any questions that you have for me?
Hmm. Not really. I didn't come into this with like prepared questions as such.
Good,
It
because
was
I
just
hate answering questions on my own show.
it's like, wait a second.
Once the script is flipped, I get anxious. I stammer. I look off into like the distance to like avoid eye contact at any cost.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good thing if you have zero questions. Um, so a question I like to ask on the show to every guest: if you were to host your own version of the show where you reconnect with your old friends, someone you haven't talked to in a while, who is someone you would like to have on as a guest?
Hmm. There's so many people.
Yeah.
That's a tough one because the thing is, like, well, before COVID, I would visit home quite often,
Mhm.
and I would always drive. And so from my place in Cincinnati to my place in Waterloo is a 7-hour drive door to door. And that drive feels a lot shorter when you're talking to people.
Yeah.
And so I usually would just like call people again, Bluetooth, driving safe, just like catch up with old friends. And so I've generally been pretty good about keeping in touch. But there's obviously a lot of people that you just aren't able to stay in touch with.
Mhm.
So I can answer the question in a very generic and like vague type of way
That's
where I
perfectly
can't
fine.
give a specific name, but I would love to like reconnect with someone that I haven't talked to in a very long time.
Mhm.
Those experiences are really, really awesome. Like, and it'll happen once in a while. Like, I'll get a random message somewhere out of the blue. It's just like, oh, hey, I saw this article and it reminded me of you. It's just like, okay, well, buddy, we haven't talked since like the third grade. And it's just like reconnecting with people like that is really, really cool.
Well,
Um,
hopefully this episode gets some eyes on you. You're gonna get some homies sliding into the DMs.
yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. All my old friends, if we haven't talked in a long time, or even if we have,
Get at him,
yep,
folks.
hit me up.
uh, well, I think that's all I've got in the tank. We've been at this for a little over an hour. Um,
Yeah.
Zuhair, has been an absolute pleasure catching up with you.
Likewise, yeah.
I stan you. I'll die for you. Uh, at the end of the show, I like to give my guest a little moment to sort of promote anything that they either care about or that they're doing themselves. Um, Called plugs. So if you want to just like plug anything at all, you have the floor.
um, well, I think I'd like to take this moment to kind of encourage social responsibility. Um, in the sense that you see a lot of current events being addressed in social media and things like that. People saying, "Oh, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that." All the power to that. I feel like everybody has an obligation to spread awareness and act accordingly as well. So I just want to make sure that people are taking their um, kind of walking the talk as well. Want to make sure that everybody realizes that things don't just start and end with social media. Just making a story or a public post or whatever about something, although it's great for spreading awareness, and I think that it is necessary, it doesn't stop there. You have to make sure that you carry those things forward to your day-to-day life as well, um, and kind of lived actions as well. And I feel like that should apply to all sorts of movements and all sorts of things that you want to spread awareness on. Um, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. And I guess while we're talking about it as well, I do kind of want to highlight something that I don't think is getting as much attention.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm not, again, with in China in the Xinjiang province, there's a bit of a ethnic genocide, ethnic cleansing type of situation happening where Uyghur Muslims are being um, kept in concentration camps,
Hmm.
and it's basically the Holocaust all over again. It's just that there's no world war and nobody cares about it this time. So just putting that out there, I feel like there should be awareness about it. And like I said earlier, if people can figure out a way to build off of just awareness and put things into action in order to come up with a way to figure out a solution, then that would be good. I think with things like this that are multinational on an international level, there's really not much you can do in your day to day life. But we are blessed with being in a diplomatic environment, in a democracy where we're told that our voices will be heard. And whether that is true or not, I'm not sure, but it shouldn't be for a lack of trying. So I would encourage everyone to, um, again, these are publicly available email addresses and contact information for members of parliament, members of provincial parliament, your MPs, your even up to the prime minister, to send emails voicing international action, because it's 2020. The world has already seen a terrible occurrence like this in the past, and you figured we would have learned from this by now. There's no room for ethnic genocide in today's day and age, and there's no reason any ethnic group should be subjected to something like that. And it's everyone's responsibility as a global citizen to do what they can to address the issue.
Powerful words.
Yeah.
On that note, I guess guess it's time to sort of wrap things up here on the show.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry, that took a
no,
pretty serious
it's
turn, but
perfectly fine. I
um,
should mention that this is a pro-China podcast. No, now's not the time for joking.
no,
Uh,
I think a joke would help lighten the mood a little bit.
but yeah, that'll wrap things up for us here at the show. Thank you, anybody, for listening, and
Yeah.
I'll catch you guys next time. Have yourselves a good day.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris.